So one of the reasons I wanted to bring this incredible group of people together, everyone in all these panels are incredible. These people are so smart, is because consumer can be really tough. I don't know if anyone has gone out to try to start a consumer company. I don't know if anyone want to raise their hands if they have done this. Yes, you can see that investors are really tough on you, even though some of the world's most valuable companies from Apple to Netflix are consumer, but it's pretty difficult to get some of these companies off the ground. And what's even more difficult is that once it is off the ground, how do you scale it? Because everyone tells you, oh, Facebook ads don't work, TikTok doesn't work. Everyone says paid ads are bad. There's so many schools of thought and opinions about consumer because we happen to be consumer, so we have thoughts on them. But today, I hope that we get to unveil, like, again, one theme this entire conference is reveal some secrets to success, reveal some challenges, and just share really personal experiences on how things manifested. So the first question I'd like to ask is, tell me each about the moment when you were starting your companies and when you knew you were onto something. And Amrit, I'd love to hear even like Tanishq expansion into the US even. So I'd love each of you to go around and tell us, what was that moment like when you realized you wanted to start this, and how did you know there was a need for it?
Can I start? Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Rooshy Roy. I'm the founder and CEO of Aavrani. I started working on Aavrani in 2017 in the fall, and it really was born out of my own experiences. I worked in finance before thinking, like when I kicked off my career, I worked in finance, and in investment banking, I was working like 80, 90 hours a week. I was barely sleeping. I was eating takeout for every meal. And it reflected in my skin and my hair, and for the first time in a way I'd never experienced before. And so I was spending hundreds of dollars on products now that I was making some money, and nothing was working for me. And one Christmas I went home and my mom saw my face and she was horrified. And she whipped up a turmeric mask for me with chickpea flour, honey, neem, and it immediately alleviated the redness and irritation in my skin, and it just completely calmed down. And I thought to myself, oh, I wish I could do this. I'm definitely going to do this when I go back to New York. And then lo and behold, I got wrapped up back in my lifestyle. I didn't have the time or the energy to go source the ingredients, let alone make the formula at home. And that's when the first light bulb went off of like, there should be something that's ready to use, off the shelf, that still embodies and like embraces the culture and the traditions that I grew up with, and has that same power and efficacy that everybody can enjoy, not just, you know, Indian men and women. So that's when it came. And when I started in 2017, it was like the height of D2C, and everything seemed so easy. Paid ads, we were getting like 3 to 5x return on our spend there. And so there were a few times I thought we had taken off and then got humbled very quickly. But that was the first time I thought, wait, we're on to something, because it wasn't just Indian men and women resonating with the products, but everyone, specifically like white, black, Asian people who are just looking for cleaner alternatives to their skincare, which is the category we started in. And so that was really exciting to me, thinking that, you know, we could really transcend our own community.
Okay, I think I'm up now. I also remember when Rooshy was first starting. I'm going to share this. It's a fun fact. I met Rooshy when she was pitching the concept for Aavrani at a startup competition at Wharton, which I had attended as well, and I was fortunate enough to be one of the judges. And when they got up there and pitched, I was like, yes. And then they left the room, and every other judge looked at me and they were like, what do you think? And I was like, yes, I am literally the target demographic, and I'm here because I know things about consumer. She did win the award that year, which was great and so super exciting. But it was just exciting to see the representation. You know, I think that's a huge part of what we do. So back to me. I'm Deepa Gandhi. I'm one of the founders of Dagne Dover. I oversee kind of like all like ops, finance, revenue strategy, the spreadsheet stuff. As actually one of my coworkers who's here today, she calls me a computer person. That's what I do very well. And so we launched the brand 11 years ago. We've been working on it for about 12 to 13 years. So it's been a journey. It's been a while now. And the first thing I will answer is, why is consumer hard? And why is it hard to get early stage investors to invest? And what I will say is, it's because it's a very illiquid and risky play. And as much as I believe in Dagne Dover and what this brand has become and what it will be, most of our investors are still sitting there on our cap table 10 plus years later, right? And so it takes a long time. And one of our first major investors that came in, who also sits on our board, he said to us when we met him, beyond like things like customer lifetime value to CAC ratios need to be high and build a profitable revenue, profitable business, he also said something that really stuck with us, which was brand building is a 10 plus year long business. And so if you're looking for investors, you need to make sure that they see it the same way. Because if you have somebody looking to see a win in 3 to 5 years based on their investment thesis and horizon and what their LPs or investors are looking for, you're going to end up having a challenge. What I love is I have an entire investor base and a board that believes a version of that. And they've been patient. And that's why I actually always say we've raised from patient capital. We didn't raise venture capital dollars. We brought in money that was family office based, that was strategic arms of hedge funds that invest in our industry on the public side and like to make smaller investments on private companies to better understand what's happening. And a lot of angel investors. And so that's my biggest thing is when I talk to early stage not investors, but early stage consumer founders, I'm like, you need to make sure you're very thoughtful of who you're bringing in if you have to bring in outside capital. Going back to the Dagne story, we launched in 2013, which was super exciting, and we were like off to the races. We launched a pre-sale, and to be clear, we launched this brand in 2013, which means Instagram ads did not exist. People would post on Facebook saying, hey, my friend launched this brand. Here's a referral code. Go shop them. And your site did not need to be perfect. You did not need to have a social presence. And people, guess what? They bought your product. So a very different time, but a very exciting time. And we did like 40K in revenue pretty immediately when we launched a pre-sale because we wanted to make sure that people actually wanted to buy this bag, that they told us that they wanted. And we've been growing since then, but we've had many ebbs and flows. And I think the biggest thing that we always, and internally we like to keep reminding ourselves is even when things are not going the way you want it, has that long-term goal and that long-term vision shifted? And we've had some moments where it's like, you know, our lender's like, what's going on? Your inventory is not turning. What is happening? And you're like, no. But like, we have a plan. We're going to get there. And so I always say, like, know your North Star. And we know what our North Star is. And has whatever has happened, good or bad, made that North Star's, like, the ability to hit that North Star better? Like neutral or worse. If it's worse, then you need to panic a little, or like at least come up with a plan. If it's neutral or better, then keep moving forward. I think the biggest inflection point for our business was about 5 years in when we launched a collection made out of neoprene, which is what most of you probably know the brand for, is that like more sporty athleisure line. And that's really when we shifted because we found that we were addressing a clear need in the market, and we've built the brand off of that.
Sidra, tell us about that first time.
Yeah, hi guys. It's my opportunity to tell you what Atoms is because looks like a lot of people don't know about my brand. So
I have like several pairs of Atoms, so it's like my subscription company. So
thank you. So my name is Sidra. I'm a founder and CEO of Atoms. I started Atoms in June 2019, and I came to the US for the first time in 2015. And my first company was leather dress shoes company that I started from Pakistan. We were working with craftsmen who were making handmade shoes. And interestingly, we took that to Y Combinator because we wanted to create a platform for craftsmen in Pakistan and in South Asia. But somehow like that idea did not take off. But one thing which, my journey kind of like shift during that time, I learned a lot about product development, especially like shoes, and kind of like build this passion that I want to make the best everyday shoes. And when I was working on my first company, even at that time, I was excited about making the best comfortable shoes for everyday in leather dress shoes. And I did not know at that time that, you know, in US, particularly in Silicon Valley, people don't wear dress shoes because I never came to the US before. And the only window I saw of the culture in the US was through Hollywood movies, where you see like a person go to office in a leather dress shoes and kind of like suit. So that was my window, but then I landed straight into Y Combinator and kind of like had a little bit of a cultural shock over there. But then one of the things which I found was people were really supportive, and they were really excited about my story, because I'm also like from a small town. So me being in Y Combinator was already a big thing, to be honest. And so then we started talking to our customers who were buying leather shoes, and there were a lot of like tech people who bought leather shoes because they heard about the brand, they were interested about the craftsman story. But one thing we noticed, that they were not wearing them everyday shoes, and that was the journey that led me to create Atoms. And then we met with Paul Graham, and Paul Graham said that, hey, have you guys ever met with your customer? And at the time, it was my first time in the US. My English was so bad, like I went through all public school and all of that. But I was like so hesitant to meet our customers. And to be honest, like that advice completely changed the way I look at business. Also, like where I am today. So we started going to Stanford Mall. We went to Nike, Adidas, New Balance, all sort of like shoe companies, from sneaker to leather dress shoes companies. And we were just trying to understand their customer, but then at the same time, we started meeting with our customer on a coffee shop. And one of the things which we discovered during that time, and by the way, like even during that time, we were talking to Uber drivers. So in San Francisco, it was like really common to take Uber rides. So we were just talking to them, hey, what shoes you wear, and all of those conversations happened during that time. And one of the things which we discovered, that people were buying even like sports shoes or athletic shoes, but they were looking for a shoes which they can wear every day, which is comfortable. They were loving the story of innovation, but they were looking for something that they don't need to think about dress up, dress down. And then we made a lot of notes, and we created a document called Ideal Everyday Shoes. And we put all our research over there. And most important key points were like looking for everyday shoes, shoes that don't smell. People love the idea of like putting shoelaces on the shoes, but they hate tying, untying shoelaces. So we put all of those on that, and then we started working on making that shoes. And then one thing happened after another. We ended up in Korea, in South Korea, where we started manufacturing these shoes. And the first customer actually came through, of course, like we sent an email to Y Combinator, founders at the time in our group, and we said we are making shoes for hackers and painters, and we can only afford to make 10.5 size because we were not been able to raise any money with our previous company. We are investing our own money. And this is our thesis. We would love to invite you at our apartment. And at the time, we were living in San Francisco under our, apartment. We had a basement, so we used to invite people over there, making Pakistani chai and breakfast for them, and kind of like opening up also like cultural conversation, but at the same time, trying to understand about their lifestyle. Because I think one of the things which was very interesting for us was, because we came from out, like, I did not spend enough time in the US. I did not understand the culture. So that was a moment to understand the lifestyle, as well as like, understand that how shoes come into people's lifestyle. And then one of the things which we learned was that most of the people were looking at their clothing or their shoes as kind of daily drivers, or a tool for productivity where they don't need to think much about that. And that's where the journey started, and we launched Atoms in 2019. By the time we launched, we had around 40,000 people in our wait list to try on the product.
Incredible. Amrit?
Hi, I'm Amrit. I head the business for Tanishq brand here in the US. So my story is a little different from everyone here. For those of you who do not know Tanishq, Tanishq is the jewelry brand of the Tata Group. Tata Group is one of the most revered groups out of India. While we are a iconic brand in India, we had no presence literally outside of India for many years. And around 2020 is when the company started evaluating different international markets, and we looked at US. And one of the jobs that we had was to convince our board of launching in the US market, because it is a complicated, mature, jewelry market, and effectively how do you make money at the end of the day for any corporation. That's the most important point. So we had to convince them as to why we should go here. And we started evaluating the business potential for us here in the US market. We did a lot of studies. We met a lot of consumers. We looked at our initial target audience, and of course, being a brand for India, we looked at how to tap into the Indian and the South Asian diaspora in the US, and that is of course our first port of entry, sort of like a beachhead for us here in the US. And when we dug deeper into it, we sort of looked at some fascinating stats that came our way. Indians, while they are maybe around 1% of the US population, maybe around 4 or 5 million, they are doing very well here. It is the highest income or the richest minority group in the US. They are scattered all over the US. A lot of them came in the last 30 years. And most importantly for us, what we figured out is that they want to stay connected to the culture. And I think we found this insight sort of very clearly during our conversations with people, that a lot of people, again, Indian, South Asian origin, want to stay connected to their roots, to their culture, weddings, religion, festivals. And in a way, for us, jewelry is a part of our culture, right? And we found that that is a huge underserved, underpenetrated market where people want to express themselves, and yet there is not enough opportunity available for them in terms of, let's say, the kind of brands or the kind of jewelry they want to wear, right? The other interesting thing that we noticed, which really was the key insight for us, is that maybe 10 years back, 20 years back, there was a kind of diffidence in expressing your roots, about where you came from. We met a lot of consumers who had no hesitation, no diffidence. In fact, they were proud of showing their culture and talk about it. We had a very interesting example of a teenager who wore a lehenga to her prom, and she came to our store with her mom to buy jewelry, to match with it. And that really, hit the nail for us, saying that, it's not just people who are, of course, coming from India and settled here and looking at buying jewelry, but even there are people with, in terms of having a dual identity, who are very comfortable in both of them, right? And of course, it's been a journey of now 3-4 years for us here. We are of course a retail consumer brand, trying to scale up and open more and more locations as we go along. But we have got a very great response so far, and I think that initial learning, that initial insight that we got, meeting a lot of consumers, as you mentioned, and we did what we call trunk shows or jewelry shows. So we couldn't really afford opening stores and showing losses, because retail is sort of very difficult business to get into. So we went across the different cities in the US. We did a lot of shows. We met consumers. So instead of commissioning expensive market researches, we did those shows. We sold, of course, but we also met a lot of consumers. And again, that gave us a lot of insight, which we are now using as we scale up across the US market. So that's our story as of now.
Thank you all for sharing such incredible different things. I've heard talk to your customers. I've heard definitely hang out with your mother. I've heard find patient capital that can last and know that a brand needs like at least 10 years. I heard pivots and wait lists to get those early customers. I'd love to hear, because, sometimes there's that initial like surge where like we got those first 100 customers, look, we did it. But then you have to start creating this repeatable process. And that's when sometimes things get tough. So I'd love to hear a little bit about what was a surprising channel or process or method where you were able to get customers in a consistent way that you'd love to share with us. Anyone can start first.
Yeah, I'll go actually, because we struggle the most in this. So actually, this is very interesting, because when you are starting up your company, you are so much focused on product and customer, and that's the only channel that you have. And it's so exciting. Like, that part is so exciting. But then when you raise investment, because someone see this as a huge opportunity, so in our case, we raised Series A, And then the whole pressure starts, and then the conversation come in that you have to have a paid ads, you have to think about activation, you have to think about stores and all of those things. And to be honest, like, we did all of that, and it's a very confusing state. And if I have to like restart, I would not do that. I think one of the most important thing is that your growth has to happen organically, and then the next step has to, even if it has to be paid, you have to think about like risk taking in a way that you are not putting everything in one basket. So, for example, like I remember like in early days, someone said like, you are building a brand, you have to do an amazing photo shoot, and let's hire a big agency and do that, and then you will run ads and they will be like amazing, your CAC will be down, your ROAS will be really good. And we did, like, we raised our first round and we did a photo shoot and we spent $100,000 on that one photo shoot. And like 15 photos came out, and the agency kept saying like, you can use this throughout the year. No, that's not how growth happens. The other important thing is that where I am right now is I learned that when your initial growth happen, after that, if you want to if you want to develop a different channel, take smaller risk. Because if you even fail on that for whatever reason, or you learn something new, either you can change your way of doing that and you can take another risk. But if you spend so much money on that, then you are hesitant. There is a lot more debate going on that, oh, we did that, it didn't work out, we lost this much money. And the conversation sideline from like learning and getting better towards like, okay, we are burning too much resources. So that huge, like, I think biggest learning that I learned, and I'm still working on that. Again, I would say like for every company, what would be the next channel? You should never follow any other brand playbook. Like, if you hire a growth person and that person come in and say like, I was in that company and I'm gonna tell you like, this is how we're gonna grow and this will work for your brand, trust me, that never work. You need to understand your product and your market really well. And market means like your customer. Don't go like, we are going to build $1 billion company, let's study the entire market. But like, even that group is 1,000 people, or like 100,000 people. Just study them, work with them very closely, and grow step by step.
Yeah, I fully agree with everything that was just said, and I think you hit on something that is extremely important. And I'm going to take a different approach to your question. To me, it's less about channels. It's more about what are you as a business, as a founder, as a brand focusing on. And I think when you start a brand, you can be a product-first company or you can be a marketing-first company. And we've seen a lot of both launch in the past 10 to 15 years. And at Dagne, we've always been a product-first company. We're like maniacal about our product, sometimes to the chagrin of our investors because things take longer to launch. But we're like, if we don't make great product, then we don't have a business. And so that's what we've always focused on. So the number one channel for us that has always worked, even like to this day, based on post-purchase survey data, 45% of our acquisition comes from word of mouth. Like word of mouth, friends and family, however you want to talk about that. And it's always teetered around 40 to 45% for the past, I'll say like 8 to 9 years, because the first year was higher when, people were talking about us on Facebook and posting about us at trunk shows and things like that. But the fact that for almost 10 years we've sustained this word of mouth is something we take a lot of pride in, because to us that means people love the product. And then the other thing that supports the focus on product beyond any other strategy is that our top 20% of customers drive over 40% of our revenue. And so what that means is when we launch something new, they buy it from us. When they see a color they love in a product that they already love, they buy it from us. And so we have a really high, really productive, repeat, loyal customer. And that we also believe is because we have great product. So yes, channel expansion is important. And on that note, I think the way we always think about channel expansion is, does this channel, whether it's paid or organic approach to social or wholesale relationships or opening our own pop-ups or stores, is this going to help us get in front of a new customer in a way that is organic to their life experience, right? So I think that one of the best examples of this is when we launched our neoprene products in 2017, we saw a lot of interest from wholesalers. Prior to that, the bags that we sold, which we started with, which some of you might not even know about, is like more traditional work totes, because we were, you know, women in business who felt that this is what we needed. We were at Wharton, we were like, we need a laptop bag, but like a laptop bag that actually looks stylish and like something I'd want to carry from any other brand. But then in 2017, we launched neoprene, which was right also at the height of like the proliferation of athleisure, the casualization of the workforce. And so we saw that the big wholesalers like Nordstrom were super into it, but also places like Equinox wanted to pick up the product to put into their stores. And to this day, I still am like, being in Equinox doors has been instrumental. Whether that person is actually shopping when they're like leaving or entering the gym, or they're like remembering us and then buying from us, which, you know, we prefer that anyways, it definitely helped get us in front of the customer who was going to purchase that product. And to this day, we still approach things that way. We just launched travel. We launched rolling luggage for the first time. And as we start to think about what distribution channels, what marketing channels can we focus on, we're saying, well, where is the person that we actually think wants to purchase this, right? Like, we can speak to our existing customer, but where are new customers? And so that's how we think about it. It's like product first, and then if you know your customer base or know who you're going after as you start to expand into new categories, which has been a new experience for us over the past couple years, it's really thinking about how do I just infuse myself into their life so that hopefully they test and see and touch the product, and then they buy it, and then we're able to get them into that kind of retention loop and cycle.
Yeah, Rooshy, I'd love to hear a little bit about your repeatable processes too.
Yeah,
for Aavrani.
so I mean, that was a learning curve for me, specifically with a product like beauty. You're relying on your customer repurchasing at least 2 or 3 times a year in order for the business to grow. And so that was definitely something I underappreciated, specifically in beauty, because the space is very competitive and there's always something new coming out. People are a lot more in a mode of discovery and trial and willing to try new things. And so even once someone buys your product, how do you get them to actually integrate it in their daily ritual? That emphasis and the marketing required once someone has already purchased is something that I learned along the way. And what we integrated were like post-purchase email funnels, text funnels, more education on our website, on our social media of like, okay, now you have the turmeric mask, but what's the best way to use it? And a lot of times you have it, but you know, you don't feel like it, or you're not patient enough to like put it on and let it sit. So, okay, how do we fit in their actual day-to-day experience in a way that they feel compelled to actually use it, finish it, and repurchase? But something I will add in terms of like a surprising channel discovery is our Instagram DMs. So the first thing I'll say is it gets really easy once you raise money to constantly kind of cater to your investors and show them you're doing a good job. And that kind of comes from like the external validation and the things that people can see outside. So that's like number of followers and engagement and, you know, PR and that kind of stuff. But what really matters in the context of repeat purchases and all of that is, are you a customer-centric brand and are you catering to the customer? And so in the beginning, a lot of people would just DM and ask questions and send selfies of their skin and like tell me how to use it, even though it's all written on the website and it's everything. And I would just like repeat that, and they would feel like this personalization of like, okay, this is for me, and then they would buy. In the early days, I would like come home at like 1 or 2 a.m. and then just sit in my bed in the DMs, just like doing it myself. And I realized I would end up spending 2-3 hours sometimes just going through, looking at people's selfies and like recommending certain products, some of which weren't even ones that I made, just that I know that from my own experience to use. And then I'm like, wait, this is what I should invest in more, not the like pretty marketing pictures for the likes on Instagram, but I should get more support on this because I'm spending time here, and this is what's actually converting. So it's behind the scenes. People don't, like the outward customer doesn't get to see how engaged we are on DMs, but it's so much more important and valuable for the growth of the brand. And so that was a big learning because I kind of like refused to invest in them. Like, I'll just do this myself. This is like the least important thing that I wait until I'm about to go to sleep to do. And it just like took me more time than I care to admit to be like, no, this is what I should invest in, versus like fancy photo shoots or that kind of stuff, which I still do, but like not to the same extent. I got customer service people. Now when you follow Aavrani, you immediately or like within an hour get a message like, hey, thanks for following. Like, this is our brand. Can we help you with something? Like, immediately start a conversation, knowing that that's the best way to end up getting them to convert.
You heard it here first. No fancy photo shoots, lots of DMs. Amrit, can you share what's been a repeatable process? It seems like you're entering this new market of the U.S. What's been working for you to see growth or sales?
So I think some of the thoughts that were shared here, they certainly mirror our thoughts and our experience. One of the things that we have noticed very clearly for us is the word of mouth. I think that all said and done, we do all kinds of marketing and media mix, but nothing works like the word of mouth, and that really comes from great product and great service. I think that if while you may be a great brand or not, or you are on the way to becoming a great brand, but if you can't satisfy the product need and the service need, you may be a great brand somewhere, but you are not relevant for me, right? And I think that's the most important insight that we've always carried, and that even in the US market for us, we have felt that that is something that we have focused on always, saying that if people are happy with what they experienced with us, then they always go back. Of course, they come back to us, and our repeat rates in just 1 year it's 40%. But they also talk about us to others, right? And the experience they got, and no amount of direct brand communication can convince anybody else apart from your friend telling you that this is a really great brand because they have exciting products or great service. So I think that has been a very critical insight for us, and we invest heavily in ensuring that both these factors, product and service, is something that while in the formative years for us in the US, we're trying to make sure we get them right, because beyond this, no amount of marketing can help you at all, right? And also on the product side, just one insight that we figured here is, again, for a brand like ours, while people may know the brand, but ultimately they need something that they relate to it here, right? So identifying what kind of jewelry they want to wear here, identifying their needs, that has been really a fundamental challenge for us, and we are sort of constantly evaluating and looking at what is that product which will help them sort of engage with the brand first up. They may not come to our store and buy the most experienced or most expensive product, but it may be a very simple daily wear item, but I need to get that right, and the focus for us has been how to acquire customers through really identifying the key product need, and lap it up with great service too, so that they remain with us.
Okay, I have one last question, and I always also love to end it with advice too, so you're gonna have to combine two answers, so bear with me. All of your brands, to my knowledge, have done some pretty exciting either collaborations or product launches. Of course, Aavrani, I think, has partnered with Lilly Singh for its hair launch. Sidra, you've partnered with Bitcoin with a Bitcoin shoe, and then another famous app reviewer for another shoe. Dagne Dover, I feel like, is constantly in my feeds with different celebrities as well. So I feel like everybody from Reese Witherspoon to somebody else is using this brand. Tanishq, I feel, has in the India at least, has also partnered with many Bollywood celebrities. So my question here is, do these partnerships ever really work? And how did you ink that first one? And that's my first question. And the second question is, any advice for anybody else here who's either trying to support more South Asian brands or trying to start a company? That will be my last question from you all, and then we'll open it up to the audience. Whoever wants to begin. How did you get that partnership going? Did it? Yeah.
Okay, sure. So the partnership with Lilly was our first big partnership at scale, and it happened very organically. I got an opportunity to send her our skincare product in 2021. The time I had started R&D on hair care but didn't have product yet. And it was just through an investor from our seed round who worked at WME, which is her agency, and was like, hey, like I can get her contact info and send her product. And at this point, I know that not to get too excited, because when you send product to a celebrity, it's like very rare that they're the ones actually even opening it. It's their assistant or their nanny or someone. So the fact that Lilly had actually opened it and then used the products and then loved it and then asked her agent to reach out to me, and she wanted to connect. And so I had a FaceTime with her and 4 people on her team, and it was a 15-minute calendar slot. So I'm like, okay, I'm just going to pour my heart out and tell her what we're building and then see what happens from there. I didn't have any kind of plan or any kind of like partnership thought in my mind. I was just like, if she loves our product and is like willing to talk about it on her platforms, that would be huge. That's as far as I thought. We got on, I told her I was working on hair, and of course hair is so important to her, the way she takes care of it. And I told her I've been a fan forever. And that sparked the continued relationship. So after that, she got my phone number and we started texting. I got my first hair care samples. I'm like, hey, like, can I send these to you? I'd love to know what you think, like not asking for anything else. So I did, and then she would put me on FaceTime and like put in the oil and be like, is it supposed to be like this? And that took 18 months of just back and forth of like just being her friend. And after the point where we were about to, actually produce the hair care, we had actually integrated a lot of her feedback. She was like, hey, like we should work together. And I'm like, yeah, I guess we should. And so I let her kind of lead. I found from prior experience, like when you dictate terms prematurely and then, kind of force it, it kills the spirit, it kills the vibe. And so I really took a backseat and let her lead on this, because I also don't know what other projects she has going on. I didn't know how much time or attention or money she could put into Aavrani. So it was her coming up with the first draft of like, here's what I can do for you. And the very first thing we did together was pitch to Sephora in March of 2023 to get into, their retail distribution. And we went together, and that was like a crazy experience, because were just like suddenly like just 2 Indian women trying to pitch our brand as though she's not this like huge star I've been obsessed with. And we walk in as though we're equals. And it was amazing. And that was like the thing that kicked everything off.
And Rooshy, what's your advice to people looking to support South Asian brands or start one of their own?
Well, to support South Asian brands, the best way to support is to buy. But if you personally don't want the product, just sharing it on your platforms, talking to your friends about it. You heard how important word of mouth is. Anytime it comes up in conversation where you have an opportunity to mention another brand or another founder in a room, always take that, because we have each other at the end of the day, and it is our support and our camaraderie that's going to elevate us to that next stage. And if you're looking to start a brand, I would say, go for it. It's not always like you need to be ready to pivot and change and not stick to your original imagination of what something could be. The best thing that I've ever done throughout this whole journey is, while staying persistent towards my long-term vision and North Star, I've just been very open to changing the way I do things. And I know a lot of times that can be challenging when you have a certain expectation of how things should go. But certain things that did not go my way ended up being the biggest blessing in the beginning of the journey. And those are some of the very things that made me on the brink of quitting. So I would just say, start, be persistent, but be willing to keep your imagination open and adapt and change.
Anyone else want to go next?
Let's go down. Okay. I don't have anything as great as Rooshy to talk about partnerships. Like, as much as we do actually have a lot of amazing people carry and use our products, we've actually never done an official partnership, because it's
incredible.
actually Never. Yeah, but we've also never, we've gone down the path. People will be like, oh my God, I love you. And then you end up in an agent conversation. The second you end up in an agent conversation before the actual, like, let's just call them like VIPs, people of influence, have come up with what they want to do, it is literally the end of the conversation. And at this point, when they kick us, if somebody kicks us to their agent, we're like, we'll come back to you when it's the right time. Like, this has been our biggest lesson, and like, I wish and I hope in the future we actually have something as organic as what you've been able to do with Lilly, because we do have it's insane, some of the people that carry our products. I often like pinch myself being like, how did this happen? So we do have a very aggressive like gifting policy. Like, if us, like, we put product out into the world. It goes back to being product first. So don't have a great partnership story. But in terms of supporting South Asian brands, 100% agree. Buy it, gift it. I think that's a big thing. It's not just buying it for yourself. Gift it, because I find even if I gift South Asian founded products or brands to other South Asians, a lot of times they don't even know that they exist. And I'm like generally in the know on these things. So I view it as a responsibility to help push that out there, share. And then also, if you see them in other retailers like a Sephora or a Nordstrom, buy it there as well, because that helps their stats, right? Because the first, especially year any brand is in one of those wholesale locations, success is very important. And a lot of times you're up against, you know, like Rare Beauty and things like that, where you have Selena Gomez talking about buying products, or Makeup by Mario, which is like a Kardashian makeup artist, like, you know, going out there into the world. So buy it everywhere is what I will say. And in terms of starting a brand, definitely go for it, but have very reasonable expectations. I think we have come out of this cycle in consumer that, you know, made you believe you can launch a brand, raise a ton of money, and hit a certain amount of some version of success, depending on how you define success. Realistically, and I think everybody up here is a version of this story, and that's why we are here with our brands still like kicking and alive today, is you have to have realistic expectations around how long it'll take, what liquidity could look like, what what all of that is going to be, and make sure you're really passionate about what you're building, because I do believe for us, at least at Dagne, that's been what gets us through when we're like, oh my God, what are we doing? And it's like, no, we still believe this product is relevant and valid in the space and for the world.
So our first partnership was with 10 Friends.
And I was our guest later today.
Yeah, and
I remember it was like, it had blue laces. It was stunning.
I know, exactly. So we sent him shoes, and he kept wearing our white pair in every other photo. So we sent him a DM and said like, hey, we would love to like do something. And he said like, I love like blue and white stripe. Let's think about doing something. So that was our first collaboration. And we launched it for a week, and we sold 1,300 pairs, which was amazing. You know, he has a really good following. And the way we actually think about collaboration is very differently. We don't look at like people as celebrities first. We think about value alignment first. So example, we are very, very clear that we want to build our brand around creators, the artists, and activists. So for example, the Bitcoin collaboration happened, which was like never heard of for a sneaker company. The reason it happened was because we enabled Bitcoin as a payment gateway on our website, and a lot of people were buying it. And at the time, the conversation, when we launched, at the time, the conversation was like, we need to create a financial freedom in the world. And to be honest, like coming from Pakistan, where there is, women, financial freedom, that kind of like words, those are not just words, those are like, are important aspect that I believe in as values. And I feel like that financial freedom should exist for everyone in the world, and not just for women, but there are so many other countries where, it's not easy to transfer money from one country to another. So big believer on that. So that partnership started with that idea. Can we, launch a campaign where we can talk about financial freedom? And then again, like Marcus Brownlee collaboration happened because he was wearing our product, and we said like, okay, let's think about if we need to create a daily driver for creators, which they can wear every day. what that would be. So that collaboration also happened from there. So again, we are not focused at all like looking at, okay, this celebrity, he has or she has this much following. The main thing is like, okay, this person has something to say, either like as an activist, as a creator, as an artist, and our brand has value alignment with them. And then we go and do. And to be honest, we keep our partnership very, very simple. We don't like go, okay, this much post has to, you have to do, and things like that. I think if you create an excitement around your product and then that value alignment, then, people go above and beyond.
I hear there might be a Juggernaut and Adams collection sometime soon, so
yeah,
stay
I would
tuned.
love that. So the second thing is, which is basically supporting South Asian founders. This is the thing which I personally like felt really challenging, and I want to say this out loud because I don't know what's the issue. Like, we are still behind supporting our own people, and we have to change this because, like, if I have to look at, like, my first customer was a white man, and still to this date we have like 30% of our repeat customer. By the way, like 18% of our customer who drive 80% of our revenue in the company are mostly like white male, and working in tech, finance, or now film director and producers. um, I have always hard time like you know having South Asian, more Pakistani, Indian, Bangladesh, that community who can support our brand. And one of the things which I have felt like over and over again, every time we launch a campaign, this hurt me the most. Like, the person who asks for the discount is mostly a South Asian, and it hurts the most.
So
like
true.
like and I could see people's profile too. Like, sometimes you just like look at Google their profile and see these people are making like such a good money, but they are not willing to invest on their people. The second thing which I have seen, which we also need to change, is that I have seen in the other side, like a lot of like white people, when I had conversation with them, and I'm just sorry, I'm like using, I don't know if it's appropriate or not, so don't quote me on that. But whenever I had conversation with them, they are not investing on me just because they are looking at me, oh, like she's poor girl, immigrant coming from Pakistan trying to build something. They look at like, okay, if I invest in her, she's so passionate about the product and the business, we can build something together, we can grow together. But on the other side, a lot of conversation I had with my Pakistani and Indian friends, they look at me, okay, she's coming from Pakistan, from a small town, I live here, I can help. And they look at me as bichari, like poor, like, okay, I'm going to be a bigger person who's going to help. They don't look at like we can work together in a partnership and grow it together. That mentality like has to go out. It has to be fucking out of the room. Like, this is killer for our own community. And the last part, starting the brand. Before you start about building a brand or starting a business, think about, is there a product that you are really excited about, that you want to see in the world, that you want to use it? If that step is clear, then I think the next step you will definitely learn, like how to build a brand, how to build a business. It will come, if you are curious and you want to do something.
Okay, so I think on your two questions, on the partnerships, at the moment we are not looking at any, let's say, celebrity partnerships or endorsements for us here in the US. But what we have been doing is, we have been working with a lot of micro influencers across various locations and cities, and in a way we felt that helps us in reaching into those communities where and those cities where they are present, and also in a way builds on the whole word of mouth that we spoke about initially. Of course, that's a very vast space, the whole influencer space, and who are the right people to associate with, and who are perhaps not, is a journey in itself. But we are using that as a medium in terms of partnerships, if you can say so, right? Um, on the second part, which is about South Asian businesses, brands, and this is something that I feel very strongly about. I think, and of course, I've been here in the US maybe only 4 years, but what I see very clearly is that, you know, Indians and South Asians have truly arrived in the US. You know, if you look around yourself, be it politics, be it professional CEOs, businessmen, be it food, be it music, be it art, the influence of the South Asian community is really increasing, and it has become a lot more prominent in the last 4 to 5 years. Um, which I think is important for people to think and really believe in that. Now, if you look at so this is really the time for, let's say, brands to leverage anything that is coming from the culture and bring it more mainstream here, right? So I think like the Aavrani brand, the way they are looking at leveraging something inherent part of our culture, I think they've looked at Ayurveda as a theme and build on products around that. But I think that there is so much that is sitting there in terms of bringing parts of our culture to the US here, making them more mainstream. And I think this is the time that the, uh, the wider population here, in terms of consumers, they don't necessarily look at a particular brand as South Asian and would buy it. I think that's not really the point. But it's also about something that is really good for them, something they like in terms of, be it a beauty product or a jewelry product, something that really sort of makes them feel good. And I think there is a lot in our culture heritage that we can bring it alive here and really leverage it. And I think that's something, let's say, for Tanishq itself, we have an aspiration to be a leading jewelry brand for all the consumers here, but being rooted in our culture and heritage. And I think that's important for us to maintain that. It's not easy, but I think the time is right. If you can't do it now, then perhaps you will never be able to do it.
Thank you so much. Can we get a huge round of applause for all of these insights? We're gonna open it up to 2 questions, but then they will be around after to also answer them. Yes, we'll start with you. Yes, steal my mic.
Hi, I'm Natasha. Thank you guys for being here. It's been super enlightening. I have a question around how you guys see yourselves in the future as South Asian brands, because one of the things I feel as a South Asian person who was born here but has lived all over the world is that my culture doesn't define me, but it informs the way I see the world. And so for something like Tanishq, where we have heritage brands like Estee Lauder, Chanel, do you guys see yourselves eventually wanting to be in the vein for South Asians as a heritage brand where we say, okay, I as a parent, I'm in my 40s, I pass it on to my children. This is what I grew up using. And now I'm passing on that culture and that brand recognition to you as a child, because my parents have been here for 45 years. And I know some of these brands like Tanishq because I've lived in India. And so I bring that with me and I bring that into my own family. So how much of that do you guys sort of see in terms of consumer recognition going ahead in the future? That's it.
Yeah, I see that as a core part of what I'm building. I always want a South Asian person to see our brand and feel a sense of comfort and belonging, that this is an extension or interpretation of our culture in an authentic way. That being said, my vision is for the brand to transcend that beyond our community. So one of the brands I look up to a lot is Tatcha, which is a Japanese-inspired beauty brand. They're very true to their roots, their traditions. They have never strayed from that, yet you're seeing like the Kardashians use them, you're seeing them, on the big runways, backstage. They're everywhere. Meghan Markle uses it. So that's what I want to happen with our brand, because I believe South Asian culture is that powerful and is that beautiful for everybody to enjoy, while still preserving the authenticity such that everybody knows that where it really comes from.
So what's interesting for me is we're not a South Asian focused brand. We're not a South Asian brand. We are a brand that was founded, one of the 3 founders is South Asian. It happens to be that 2 of us are Asian, right? So one of my co-founders is Korean American. You have me, and then our third co-founder, who's actually the name on the brand. So Dagne Dover. Dover is Jessie Dover's last name, and she's the designer, like our chief creative officer, and all of that. And so over the years, when we started the brand and business, we really didn't focus on any of our cultural identities or who we were, or we were very immigrant child mentality about how we started the brand. When you have like a Korean American and an Indian American, you're like, yep, this is just how we do things. But we didn't. And then as we've now actually grown and have our own platform, we ended up hearing a lot, myself, Melissa especially, from our communities being like, I didn't even know that there was a South Asian founder of Dagne Dover, or a Korean American or Asian, right? And we didn't even know two Asians. And so what we've actually been doing a lot of is, how do we now, actually having had the version of success that we have had, right? How can we be supportive of the communities and build that community up? So actually, in addition to actually also answer the like, how do you support other South Asian brands, is we do a lot now with our campaigns to support our communities that matter to us, right? So diversity is important. But the way we think about diversity is, first of all, we have a diverse team, not just among the founding team, but at the company. So how do we bring voice and light, and also maybe educate our customer base around these communities, around these things that matter? So we have this big VIP gifting program. And whether it's like AAPI Heritage Month, or Diwali is about to come up, or Eid, when you think about more South Asian or Asian-centric moments, you know, we do a box that then not just, you know, we gift to people who identify as part of that community so that they can then know us better, but we also then put other brands in those boxes that are from that community. And we generally try to go to brands that we believe we want to support. They're often ones that we love. You know, Aavrani and us are going to do the Diwali thing together, among some other brands. But I think what we kind of have taken it on is, we have this platform that is not South Asian centric or Asian centric or so many other things centric, right? So then how do we make sure that that base knows more about the communities that matter to us? And we do it for a lot, right? And then we use our store to host events, to bring other brands in, to bring people in. And it's become very much part of our DNA, and we love it, because we're like, if you really want to believe in representation and equality, then you have to be somebody who pushes that forward. Even if, like, you know, our customer is kind of like heritage or culturally agnostic, we can represent different heritages and different cultures, and through what we do and who we partner with. And so, right, so for example, when we're thinking about influencer marketing and marketing to influencers and creators, we push hard on making sure that there is representation in that, and you're not just gifting or working with, on a paid side, a white woman in the Midwest because she drives the sales. We make sure that we are working with a wide range, and we have different goals based on who it is and what we're doing.